Thank you for joining us today. The Bennington County State's Attorney's Office. Oh, okay. We'll start. Hold on a second. All set? Thank you for joining us today. The Bennington County State's Attorney's Office of Vermont and the Berkshire District Attorney's Office of Massachusetts are pleased to announce the successful resolution to two unresolved cases from the 1980s in the states of Vermont and Massachusetts. On the morning of Tuesday, December 9th, David Morrison pleaded guilty in Berkshire Superior Court to kidnapping in connection to the 1981 kidnapping of 15-year-old Laura Sheridan. In the same afternoon, David Morrison pleaded guilty in Bennington Criminal Division Court to murder for the 1986 murder of 32-year-old Sarah Hunter. The sentences are as follows. Kidnapping for Massachusetts. The defendant was sentenced to no less than 2 years and no more than 4 years in state prison to be run concurrent with a California sentence and a Vermont sentence. Murder in the state of Vermont. The defendant was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. The defendant waived his right to appeal of the life sentence. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts versus David Morrison stems from a kidnapping in 1981. On June 23rd of that year, Laura Sheridan was kidnapped by David Morrison. Laura was able to escape his car after he pulled over to a rest area on Route 7 in New Ashford. The state of Vermont versus David Morrison stems from the murder of Sarah Hunter. On September 19th, 1986, Sarah Hunter was reported missing by a coworker after she failed to appear at work. On November 27th, 1986, Sarah's body was found in a wooded area in Paulette, Vermont. This morning, we will hear remarks from Bennington County State's Attorney Erica Marthage of the state of Vermont, Berkshire District Attorney Timothy Shagrew of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Major Schmidt, Commander of the Vermont State Police's Criminal Division, and Major Boutwell from the Massachusetts State Police Division of Investigative Services. We are also joined by Detective Lieutenant Sherber of the Unresolved Crimes Unit of the Massachusetts State Police. A press packet will be sent out following this press release or this press conference. If you feel that you are not on our email list, you can give me a card and I'll make sure you are on that list. That will include both a detailed release of both cases as well as the Vermont affidavit. Questions will be followed after all of our speakers. Thank you.
Good morning. This is Sarah Hunter. In the fall of 1986, she was in the prime of her life. She was a golf pro, a daughter, a sister, a friend, and a partner. That life ended when she was murdered on a Sunday afternoon in the small community of Manchester, Vermont. Yesterday, David Morrison was convicted and sentenced to life without parole for her murder. This brings a modicum of closure to the people of Manchester for the crime that changed our community forever. Manchester was changed on that Sunday afternoon when a well-known community member went missing and was not found for more than 2 months. A sense of fear and uncertainty around the safety we all enjoyed for many years changed us forever. Sarah's family will never enjoy that sense of closure. They will forever be haunted by this horrific crime and the loss of Sarah in a community where she was truly loved. I have to say I am honored and grateful to be the Bennington County State's Attorney. As a lifelong resident of Manchester, I was 16 years old at the time of this crime, and being able to work on justice for Sarah has been the most meaningful goal of my career. I want to thank the Massachusetts District Attorney's Office and the Massachusetts State Police for taking the initiative to approach the state of Vermont. Without the hard work of the Massachusetts State Police, we never would have been able to bring David Morrison to justice. I also want to thank the state of California, who has been in contact with my office for the past almost 20 years, keeping me apprised of the state of his life sentence he received out there. They had likely been also been in touch with the Vermont State Police through that a whole time so that we could keep tabs on where he was in his sentence. This collaboration and never giving up hope that we could someday convict Sarah's killer was absolutely the catalyst for this closure. Deputy State's Attorney Jared Bianchi has put in an inordinate number of hours investigating and navigating a maze of state and federal law. Ultimately, he crafted what is truly a novel resolution, unlike anything I've read about in any other criminal cases. I have to give a very special recognition to investigator Tom Truex. He was the original case officer and a retired Vermont State Police detective. He has lived with this unresolved case for almost 40 years. He did not hesitate to answer my call when I asked for assistance and requested that he come out of retirement 25 years later and travel to the state of California to a very serious incarcerative prison to get one more interview. I want to acknowledge Sarah's sister and her family, who have my utmost appreciation and respect. They have never given up hope despite the multiple setbacks that have happened over the last 20 years in particular. She has always answered the phone call when I reach out. She lives with the heartbreak and the trauma of this every day. Being involved in this process repeatedly and sometimes very disappointing outcomes has required more strength than most people I know can bear. This case demonstrates that it is never too late to exact justice in an unsolved case. But today I want to make sure we remember Sarah Hunter. She was a wonderful woman, and she has forever become a part of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, State's Attorney Marthage, for having us here today. This joint conference is a true representation of the collaboration that took place on these cases from the start all the way to the finish. Yesterday's guilty pleas for kidnapping in Massachusetts and murder in Vermont were the culmination of extensive collaboration between both our prosecutor's offices and the state police from both Massachusetts and Vermont. This unprecedented collaboration demonstrates the immense potential for success in solving cases when we work together. The Berkshires is in a unique geographic location. We share borders with Connecticut, New York, and Vermont. The defendant in this case lived in Vermont and drove to the Berkshires and Berkshire County on his way to work in Connecticut. This extensive route of daily travel shows that our case would have been much more difficult to solve if we worked in isolation. Thanks to our collaboration between our agencies, we're able to solve not one, but two unresolved cases. I would be remiss if I did not recognize the ingenuity of the Massachusetts State Police in the creation of the Unresolved Cases Unit. Having a trooper dedicated to investigating unsolved cases, what used to be known as cold cases, was critical to solving Laura's case in Massachusetts. While I'm thrilled with yesterday's outcomes, I cannot imagine what Laura's family, and Sarah's family must be feeling. They have waited almost 40 years to find answers to the violent acts committed against them and their loved ones. While I'm certain yesterday's police hearings were difficult, I also hope this long overdue delay of justice brings some closure to this horrific experience they had to face. To Lori, Ms. Hunter's sister, and Laura, I am amazed by the bravery and the composure you demonstrated yesterday in sharing your victim impact statements. I know that those in courtroom yesterday will always remember your testimony for years and years to come. On June 23, 1981, Laura was on her way home from Pittsfield to her childhood home in New Ashford. She was 15 years old at the time. It was routine for Laura to take the bus from Pittsfield to Lanesboro, and it was normal back those days to hitchhike the remaining part of the journey home. On this day, Laura was picked up by what we now know was David Morrison. After speeding past her house, Laura quickly realized she was in grave danger. Shortly after, Mr. Morrison took out a small gun. According to Laura, it was at this point where she knew the only option was to fight back. A struggle ensued, and Laura was able to get control of the gun. However, Mr. Morrison grabbed her and pushed her down, pulling the car off the side of the road to what Laura believes was to load the gun. When the car pulled into a rest area, Laura was able to escape the car and run into the road for help. Passerby saw Laura and stopped, one taking her back to safety and another following Mr. Morrison's car as it sped north in Vermont. In 1981, however, David Morrison was put on trial for assault and battery by means of a dangerous weapon and possession of a firearm without an FID card for this incident. However, he was found not guilty by a jury of his peers. While I do not know why he was not charged with kidnapping back in 1981, I'm grateful he wasn't. I take comfort that we were able to finally seek justice on Laura's behalf. Laura, thank you for your patience, your cooperation throughout this entire process. To Sarah Hunter's family, I know this journey to yesterday's plea was arduous and it was heartbreaking. I also know, based on what Lori, Sarah's sister, expressed in her victim impact statement, that this process was almost 40 years of public attention, something Sarah would never have wanted. I hope that yesterday's plea and sentencing brings closure to what amounts to a lifetime of uncertainty in the death of Sarah, a beloved daughter, sister, and aunt. To everyone involved in solving this case, all the way back to 1981 into 1986 to today, thank you for your dedication in the pursuit of justice. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that I'm grateful that the defendant did follow through with his word and plead on those cases yesterday. I also would like to remind everybody that Vermont and Massachusetts continue to work on unsolved cases, and we will continually work diligently to solve these cases in the past. We can succeed, but it takes the cooperation, in this particular case, 3 states, 3 governors, 2.5 years worth of work to get this to fruition. The fact that we were able to bring justice to these 2 families is incredible. But there are cases out there to be solved. If you know something, please speak up. Please speak to us. Don't be afraid to come forward. We can solve these cases, and this case is a prime example of that. And I'm very grateful that it was only two years ago that we started doing these unresolved cases in the Massachusetts State Police by assigning state troopers to it. I hope we continue to do this work. I know I will continue to do this work, and I thank you all for being here today.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. First, on behalf of the Vermont State Police, I want to express our continued sympathy to the Hunter family. I hope that what's taken place here yesterday in court and over the past few weeks and months is able to bring some sense of resolution to Sarah Hunter's family and the overall Manchester community. I cannot overemphasize how proud and appreciative I am of all the men and women who worked this case over the past almost 40 years. There's far too many to name. If I tried to do that now, I'd certainly leave out several people, so I'm not going to attempt that. But I'm going to specifically acknowledge retired Detective Sergeant Tom Truex. I've known Tom for decades. Tom was the original lead, as you guys are aware of. And as you can see in the affidavit, and as Eric mentioned, he came out of retirement to play a critical role in the resolution of this case. And I am positive we would not be here today speaking as we are if it wasn't for his steadfast dedication and commitment to this case and to the Hunter family. Likewise, VSP is greatly appreciative of Bennington County State's Attorney Erica Marthage and her team, our counterparts at the Massachusetts State Police, and the prosecutors from the Berkshire District Attorney's Office. The level of collaboration that took place to reach this conclusion is truly amazing and unprecedented as far as I'm aware. Finally, I never knew Sarah, but for sure she was cherished and loved by those whose lives that she touched. I've witnessed the impact that her loss has had on the family and on the community. And while we cannot bring her back, but my hope is we've at least provided some answers and a measure of justice for the crimes that were committed against her. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Massachusetts State Police Colonel Jeffrey Noble, I'd like to thank Vermont State Attorney Erica Marthage for for having us here, Vermont State Police Colonel Birmingham, and Berkshire District Attorney Timothy Shagru for having the Massachusetts State Police here today. It isn't often that you can look the victim of a crime in the eye more than 40 years later and tell them we have the suspect responsible behind bars. But that's exactly what we're able to do today. It goes without saying that solving complex cases like these requires unwavering focus on the singular goal of delivering justice for the victims. Today, thanks to this team of investigators from Vermont and Massachusetts, we have done just that for the two victims in these cases, Laura Sheridan and Sarah Hunter. The Massachusetts State Police Unresolved Case Unit, particularly Trooper Kyle Jolin, the Berkshire State Police Detective Unit, and the Vermont State Police relentlessly pursued the facts in this case. They used their training and skill to critically review the old case files, re-interview witnesses, and travel on a mission to California, where the suspect ultimately confessed to his crimes. This case also demonstrates the power of new information in unresolved cases. The simple act of a member of the public calling in a tip led investigators to the outcome we had today. The Massachusetts State Police want to take this opportunity to remind the public that it's never too late to share information, no matter how small the detail. Your information could be exactly what's needed to give the investigators a break in the case. Finally, I'd like to thank the brave victim in our case for coming forward at the time of her kidnapping and all these years later, continuing to share her story with investigators. The information she shared in 1981 was preserved, and 44 years later, we hope this justice, however delayed, can provide you with some measure of peace. On behalf of our law enforcement team, please keep the victim in our case, as well as Sarah Hunter and her family, in your thoughts. Laura, we hope this arrest today gives you some measure of peace and comfort as you move forward. Thank you.
We will take a moment for questions. One note I do want to make, Trooper Kyle Jolin's name has been brought up in press outlets that covered the story yesterday. For the sake of future investigations, we respectfully ask that his name not be included in any other press after today. Thank you. We'll take questions. Attorney Marcus, do you want to?
At what point did Morrison appear on your radar screen, become a suspect, and what has he been doing for the last 4 decades?
So he was very quickly a suspect. He was on, at the time, Detective Truex's radar pretty early on. They were developing information. He, since the early 90s, has been incarcerated in California for very similar kidnapping, sexual assault type crimes.
Also, he was charged about a little over 10 years ago. Can we talk about what happened with Dr. Julia?
Yeah, let's.
Sorry.
That was me. So we had been reviewing this case right after I took office in 2007. We were receiving calls from the California correctional facility where he was housed, talking about the potential of him meeting his minimum on his sentence there and potentially being considered for parole. So at that point, we reviewed all of the information. I reviewed the initial, there had been some affidavits prepared back in the early 90s. I reviewed all of those, and we were able to have some of the physical evidence tested at the FBI forensic facility. We did some DNA testing, confirmed some of the physical evidence that would have supported a charge for David Morrison. And so I filed those charges, requested interstate extradition, brought him here. He was charged at that time, and then it was determined that there were some issues with the chain of custody of the physical evidence that we had tested. Probably not crazy, right? Not given that the evidence was 30 plus years old, and had changed locations a number of times. At that point, I dismissed the case. I was concerned that had we taken it to a trial at that point, we would not have prevailed. David Morrison had been all along indicating that at some point he may discuss what happened, and he only wanted to talk to Investigator Truex. Investigator Tom Truex's son, Sam Truex, was also a Vermont police detective and was able to coordinate a lot of this investigation with the state of Massachusetts when the issue came up again. Vermont State Police wanted to send a team out there to interview him, but Investigator Truex was retired. So that was when my conversation / pleading with Tom to go out to California started. But Tom offered right away. This has been that case for him. I think that he has sat with it for so long, and it was very important to him to get closure. So that's when we were able to get Mr. Morrison to confess.
Are there any other unresolved crimes in this region of the country for which he might be a suspect?
I never say never. After this, when I dismissed this case in 2015, I thought there's no way in hell this is ever coming back, but here we are. So maybe.
What's your understanding of how soon after Hunter's murder did Morrison flee the area?
It was not long after. When I say not long, I'm talking years, a couple of years, because he was out in California by the early 90s.
You saw that for years he'd been alluding to the fact that one day he may confess to this crime or something along those lines. Why do you think he chose now to come to tell?
Well, that's part of the interstate discussion that we were having with California. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I don't think he did it out of the goodness of his heart. I think he did it because he had something to gain. He came to the realization, look, I'm probably never making parole in California. So if I'm going to serve a life sentence, I'd prefer it to be on the East Coast somewhere where I have family. So kind of, I don't want to downplay the fact that, as the Massachusetts district attorney said, I'm thrilled he followed through on his word, but he had something to gain. So
During the course of his adult life, did Morrison have a family? Did he have a job?
he did, as was discussed earlier, he had employment in Connecticut and was traveling back and forth. He does have family in Vermont. He did at the time. I believe he still has some. I think that he's from the East Coast. I think that's why he had an interest in being back here.
Were family members aware of his crimes? Were they interviewed during this process?
Well, everyone was interviewed, but it would be speculation about whether he was aware or not. I know there was at least one media outlet that included that he confessed something to a family member, but we have no information to support that.
It was also mentioned that there was a tip that was called in that ultimately led to the outcome of this. Can you talk about what that tip was?
Yeah, I could take that. First, to answer, go back a little bit to your question. He left after 1981 when he committed the offense against Laura, and he was found not guilty. He fled down to California. He was in the Navy for a number of years, so there's a break until 1986 when then this murder takes place. So there's a little bit of time that took place there. Subsequent to that, after that murder, he got himself jammed up in California and was been incarcerated for the period of time. But when we started the cold case unit almost 3 years ago now, the first thing we did was taking all the unresolved cases out, and we started working on some of the cases that we had in the Berkshires, both sexual assaults and murders. And at happenstance as to be, we had a call from an anonymous caller indicating that Morrison may be involved in sexual assaults in Berkshire County and maybe murders in Berkshire County in Vermont. As a result of that information, our state police contacted Vermont. We began to work conjunctively together, and worked and tried to figure out, sharing our files, looking at the information, sharing what happened, where we knew he was in 81 and what we knew what happened in 86. Selfishly, we were looking to solve some of our cases as well. So we invested in that. We continued to communicate with that. Once we found out that Mr. Truex had a relationship with Mr. Morrison, we then worked with Vermont, and we decided, all of us, that we would dedicate the resources and the finances to get this done. I sent out 2 state troopers along with my first assistant out to California, along with Mr. Truex and other individuals from Vermont. They all went out there and did the first interview with him. It appeared at that time that he had that rapport and relationship with Mr. Truex, and then was able to confess that case and then confess to our case as well. But I don't think he would have said anything to answer some of the questions I made earlier, unless and until we brought that indictment. And that was the reason why in May of 2024, I made a decision that we were going to indict him for the kidnapping. He had left the state of Massachusetts, so the statute of limitations had not expired, which gave us an opportunity to charge him with the kidnapping. He never was charged with kidnapping, even though he was acquitted of those other charges. He wasn't charged with kidnapping. So we made the decision. We got in touch with Laura, and lo and behold, luckily, we found her. She was willing to come back. She was so brave and came and testified at the grand jury. So we were very pleased with that. We got the indictment. Once we had the indictment, we knew what he wanted. He didn't want to be in California State Prison. He wanted to be in Vermont State Prison. We investigated whether or not we could have him in Massachusetts, whether he could serve his time here. There was a lot of conversation going on between 3 states, and I said 3 governors and all the state troopers on both sides. Multiple lawyers reviewed agreements that we had. We had multiple agreements between the states we wanted to make sure that whatever we did, he wasn't going to get out. So no mistakes could be made. We want to make sure that he was going to go back to California. If he came out to here and we had him in Massachusetts and he then refused to plead, we were going to try him. And we'd keep him there. And then if we had to, we could have moved to a sexually dangerous person in Massachusetts. So we had an avenue that I knew it was safe to bring him back here. At that time as well, we also knew he wanted to go to Vermont. So we knew we played him. We knew he wanted to come back for a reason. So, and that's the reason why we did that. So we got him back here. And again, he was true to his word. He did take and admit what happened. He got what he wanted, and we got what we wanted. It was quid pro quo. It's what he wanted. We gave him what he wanted, and he gave us what we wanted, which was the resolution. So across the board, it was he wanted something, we wanted something, and we were able to get that resolution. But we couldn't have done it without the tremendous work of the Vermont State Police, who were able to solve this case. This was a real, collaboration amongst everybody. And I'm pleased with all that. So that's the information I have, but that's how it all came into play and how it played on out. But again, we're very pleased that, this is how it results.
Can you speak to if he is a suspect in some of the disappearances?
Well, let me put it this way. Any of the open cases that we have that are unresolved cases, we haven't ruled anybody out in these cases. So there are always possibilities that, that something could come up. So we will continue to investigate those. We're not stopping these cases. I said earlier, we want information coming from the public. This shows that if you give information, one tip, that we could get that information. And so we got it. And so we now have it. So, I'm hoping that will happen with other cases that we have. So we will continue to work on those. And if people have information, please provide it to us, because potentially, I don't know. But right now, none of these cases are closed. So we will continue to look at all suspects in all cases.
Will you be taking this DNA cross-checking open cases?
Yeah, they obviously they've been doing that in any event anyway, because he's been housed. So it's just in the case some of the cases we have in Massachusetts, we don't always have forensic evidence, so we have to do it without forensic evidence.
Is Laura Sheridan still living in the Berkshire?
Laura Sheridan does not live in the Berkshire. She flew back here and was here for yesterday for the trial. She's here today and she's flying back home. So yes, it took a lot for her to get out here. It was flying in America is really difficult right now. It took a lot to get her here on Monday. So she did make it.
To clarify, the original charges in which he was acquitted were what?
It was assault and battery by means of a dangerous weapon and illegal possession of a firearm, in which he was acquitted on. Apparently, as Laura has indicated, during the trial, there were people trying to say that it was her gun. Whatever the case was, I wasn't there in 1981, but I could tell you, or 1982, when I think the case was tried. But he was acquitted on those, but he was never charged with kidnapping, which left us with that avenue open. So, and luckily it did, because I think that's the reason why he was able to cooperate with us and get what he wants, and we got what we wanted.
Would Laura like to step up to the podium? Let's talk about resolution, how happy you are. Up to her. Well, what are your overriding emotions to see the resolution of this case?
That I'm a really lucky person, that I'm grateful that I spent 20 minutes with David Morrison and no more, that I escaped. I think having a daughter and kids, I now, would share with any woman, fight back. And I know every situation is different because there can be situations where maybe you can't fight back. So I had luck on my side. So those are my emotions. And then yesterday, when I kind of fully processed what this meant for Sarah Hunter, that was really tough because she wasn't lucky. And so that was very overwhelming to know that this person, and I have, without a doubt in my mind, I know exactly what happened to me back in 1981. That he's seen justice for her family. I'm grateful. I mentioned to her sister, it must be good to have closure, and she said, it's not closure at this point, it's finality. And I've thought a lot about those words. I mean, the difference between closure and finality. It's it's very final for her and her family. And but I know she lives on through her family and her. I know there's a golf tournament in her honor. In recognition of the career she could have and should have had David Morrison not crossed her path back in, I guess that was 86. And so, a lot of emotions. Yeah.
For that finality, does this feel like closure to you? Did you ever imagine getting this point?
I was very young. I didn't live with a constant mulling over it. I escaped. It was 20 minutes. You put things in the past. And it wasn't until Officer Kyle Jolin called me. I was at work. I never changed my name, so I guess it was easy for him to find me over all those years. And but the minute he said he was calling from the Berkshire County Police, I knew exactly what it was. So I never have forgotten it. But I didn't live every day thinking about it, dwelling on it. I still kept my statement. We joke, I still have my statement from back in 1981. So it was a part of my life. And I always remembered it. I remembered the trial and the disappointment of not having justice then. But again, I didn't dwell on it, just moved on in life. I really admire the police work that was done now. I just can't imagine 3 states, California, Massachusetts, the humility of the officers and the people just involved to focus on resolution and on the right issues. So it must have been really good work, and that's great because I don't think they did such a good job, back then. So.
Is there any message you wish you could share to Morrison if you had the chance to say something at this point after all these years?
Yesterday in court, I had an opportunity to address the court and him, and I'm just grateful I didn't have to. I'm grateful I got away from him. Yeah, I'm grateful I got it, and I hope he still has time. He's still he's I guess 65 years old, so he still has time to, in whatever conscience that man has, to if he has done more things to other people, other women, to say something and So my hope would be if he has something to say that can give some peace to people. I think he does things obviously in his own self-interest, but if there's a degree of compassion that he has, I would hope he would come clean and share that. So other families like Sarah's can truly have finality.
Yeah, or you spoke those words beautifully under very difficult circumstances. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for all the work done in these states.
And I just want to say, Laura and her case were, Tom is right, the district attorney's office in Mass offered a sentence and agreed to a concurrent sentence on Laura's case that was significantly less than what you would expect for a kidnapping. But, you know, when they spoke with Laura about whether that was something that she was comfortable with, her victim input was absolutely anything that can assist in also closing the Sarah Hunter case. And that was extremely important. And frankly, if Massachusetts had not actually gotten an indictment, I think that was the chess piece that was missing from being able to kind of make everything work out. Now, Mr. Truex was investigator Truex. I had the honor of swearing him in as an investigator for my office when he went out to California. So that was a badge he was more than quick to hand back to me as soon as he got back from California. This was it, I think. But I think it was just all those pieces in that collaboration and setting aside all of our individual agendas and getting this done. So.
Question, Mr. Morrison, does he go back to California or is he here now? That's it.
Yeah, I'm going to ask my deputy, Jeremy.
Let's clarify that. Yeah.
So the expectation is that he will remain in the custody of the state of Vermont and the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections. And if anything should happen to his Vermont sentence, he would be remanded to Massachusetts or California. But the expectation is that he will spend life without the possibility of parole here in the state of Vermont.
So he's not going to go back to California. He stayed here now.
That's correct.
And mugshot of Mr. Morrison.
Yeah, so when we send out the press packet, that will include the affidavit. That will also include the mugshot from Vermont for Mr. Morrison. At this time, we thank you so much for being here. You're welcome to email me for the state of Massachusetts, State's Attorney Marthage, whose contact will be on that press release for the state of Vermont. We hope you have a great day. Stay safe in the snow.
Thank you. Congratulations. Well done. Did you put the photo up?
Julia?